and welcome to my January wrap-up. In January, I read 16 books and I generally enjoyed most of them, if not all of them. There are a few kind of like just misses for me, but most of all, I did enjoy them. I very much enjoyed them. There's only one which I didn't like and I had no choice to read that because it was a school book, and so I kind of have to like it. Book number 1 was Babe in Boyland by Judy Gurman. I read this right at the start of the year, and this book basically follows a girl named Natalie, and she writes the relationship column for her school newspaper, but one day she's accused of not knowing anything about guys, so she decides to enroll herself at the guys only prep school across town, and there she really hopes to kind of get into like the mind space of a guy, and she kind of bites off more than she can chew. I thought this was a very fun book. It was impossible not to smile or laugh while reading it. Natalie had a very, very, very humorous voice, and I just absolutely like loved the dialogue. It was so funny. It did remind me a lot of She's the Man though, to the point where like there would be something that happened in the book that was literally exactly what happened in the movie. Like in the movie where like they kick the soccer ball and it hits her in the groin and she has to like, oh no, the pain, it burns. Like everyone knows that scene. It's like cinematic masterpiece. And in this scene it had, like this scene in the book, it had exactly the same thing but with a basketball, and I was like, hold on. That was only one of many instances where there was a similarity, but overall I very much enjoyed this book and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey, and this is a dystopian book, and if you actually have not read this, go read it because there's a movie out right now and I watched the movie and I thought it was absolutely amazing. But The Fifth Wave follows a girl named Cassie, and she is on a mission to go get her brother back from a military base after aliens have invaded their planet. This was a very gritty dystopian book, and I don't read a lot of really gritty dystopian because normally it gets sugar-coated, like Delirium and The Selection. Yes, The Selection is considered dystopian, and I'm kind of like, okay. Only other gritty dystopian book that I've read was The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Racken, and that whole trilogy is gritty and painful and real and raw, and The Fifth Wave just reminded me so much of that, and I loved it so much. A top-notch dystopian book, and I obviously gave this 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Behind the Beautiful Forevers by Catherine Boo, and I had to read this one for school and I really didn't like it. Ooh, wait a minute. And I gave The Fifth Wave 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Behind the Beautiful Forevers by Catherine Boo, and you can see this has like tabs in it because I had to annotate it, and I hate annotating books, but this book basically follows a boy in India, and he is blamed for burning his neighbor, and this, okay, that is not even a good description of the book because this book is actually many stories like intermingling into one, and I don't know where I stand on this book. I really didn't like it because it was so confusing to get into, and it was just, I don't really want to study it because it was so confusing and I don't really get it to the extent that I really should if I'm going to study it. But I found it ironic how Catherine Boo is a white upper middle class woman who lives just outside of Washington DC, who went to an Ivy League school. I just found it very, very kind of discerning how she was white and she thought she could really just talk about the story and try and do it. Like, honestly, I respect her for doing it. Takes balls to do that, but I just really didn't think it was appropriate for her to write that book. It was very, yeah, and you could tell that a lot of it was kind of put in there for dramatic effect. The book did pick up a little towards the end, but overall it was just very slow. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Infinite Sea by Rick Yancey, and this is the sequel to The Fifth Wave. This was not as strong as the first book. It's considerably shorter as well. This rocks in at like 320 pages while the other one was almost 500. It was good. I liked it. I really did enjoy it, but I just felt that it wasn't as strong, and it's making me kind of worried for the last book, which is coming out May 24th, and I don't know how to feel about it. It was good. I did like the backstory on Ringer. I really liked her backstory, but I wish there was more Cassie because the story did start with Cassie, and I just wish there was a little bit more Cassie in this book but I did very much enjoy the ringer aspect and her backstory. I'm not quite satisfied with this book, but I did ultimately end up liking it, almost to the point of loving it. Well, I think I pretty much did love it. It did tick off all the criteria for me, and for that I did have to give it 5 out of 5 stars, but it was just, I don't know, I felt like I could have just wanted a bit more, and I'm not even sure if I should give it. Now that I think about it, it is more of like a 4.5 out of 5 stars, but it did ultimately draw me in, and it was a very, very good book, in my opinion. A lot of people really didn't like it, and I respect that. The next 5 books I read were the Violet Eden chapters by Jessica Shervington, and I'll just quickly stick a picture in there because I don't actually have the books anymore. They are in this bag. I could have just brought them out, but I can't because it took a lot to get them into that bag. I'm giving these back to my teacher on Monday. It's currently a Saturday as I'm filming this. I absolutely adored this series. It is a 5-book series, and I loved it so much. Each and every book got 5 out of 5 stars for me. It was just an amazing, amazing series. I loved it. It was humorous. The story was amazing. The characters are amazing. I do have a full book talk review discussion video that I will link here, down there, anywhere. But I ultimately loved this series. It was so good, and I cannot recommend it enough. I cannot say enough good things about it. So go read it. Please go read it. It's out in America, it's out in Australia, it's out everywhere. Go. Also, fun fact, I'm pretty sure this was picked up for television. I did think I read an article. Yeah, I read an article that this was actually picked up for television. So hopefully I get a TV show of this, because I would sell my soul for a TV show. The next book I read was actually 2 novellas into one bind-up, but I counted them as 2 on my Goodreads challenge, and that was Cruel Crown by Victoria Aveyard, which has the novella Queen Song and the novella Steel Scars, plus a little glass sword excerpt at the back. First, going on to Queen Song real quick, I absolutely loved it so much. It was such a good novella. I really wish it was longer because it skipped whole chunks of Corianne's journey to becoming a queen, to having Cal, to her suicide, and I really wish that was explored more, because you could have done such a good job at exploring how insanity slowly took over, because it really just glossed over everything. But I really did love Corianne's story, even though I wish it was just a bit longer, but this was ultimately 5 out of 5 stars. Steel Scars, however, I didn't like. It was really confusing to read. There was so much code everywhere, and it had messages throughout that I just found really confusing, because I don't know, I feel like code and messages you can do really well in Illuminae, but I don't feel like it was done very well here. I felt like this novella was very slow. I did end up skim reading a lot of it, and I actually at one point put it down, only to pick it back up again and skim read. Ultimately, I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Losing It by Cora Carmack, and I've been looking forward to reading this for a really long time. So I think I was going into it with expectations that it'll be a little bit deeper than what it was. This was actually mainly just fluff, and I wasn't expecting it to be so fluffy. I thought it was going to be a little bit more deeper, a little bit more emotional, but it really wasn't, and that didn't stop me from not liking it. I absolutely loved this book. It was so funny and interesting, and I really did like the dynamic between characters, but I just really hoped there'd be more depth there to the characters as well. They felt a little two-dimensional to me, but I did very much enjoy it. I did ultimately like it, and this is a 4.5 out of 5 stars for me, but for Goodreads' sake, it's a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Passenger by Alexandra Brackett, and I adored this book so much. It was such a good book. I loved the characters, I loved the story. It was so addicting, and it was so good to fall back into Alexandra Bracken's writing, because I really missed it since I finished reading the Darkest Minds trilogy, and I just adored this book so much, and I cannot wait for the sequel. And I'm actually hoping the sequel's going to come a bit earlier, because she's already finished doing edits on it and everything, and she's handing it in, and she's like, oh, I've done my 3rd round of edits, and there'll be arcs at BEA, so I'm hoping it actually gets released in 2016 instead of the start of 2017, because it stresses me out having to wait for like Wayfarer. Like I really want it. And obviously I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, even though it deserves like a million out of 5 stars. Plus, if you haven't checked it out yet, there is actually a candle based on Nicholas over at the Melting Library that I'll link down below, and I really want to buy it, but it's really expensive to ship it to Australia, so I'm really kind of like saddened. The next book I read was The Distance from A to Z by Natalie Blitt, and this was just a fun contemporary that I downloaded. It was like $3, and I'd been hearing about it a lot on Goodreads, and it had like an okay rating, so I thought, you know, I might as well, it sounded cute, I might as well check it out. This story, it was a cute contemporary. There was nothing really to it. There was no kind of like factor that made me just want to like love it. I mean, it was good and I enjoyed it, but I think that was to the extent. Like, I wouldn't go as far to say as I absolutely loved it. Like, it was okay. It was a good contemporary. It was a good mood filler. Even though there was nothing that made me love it, it was very addictive to read. I don't know why, but I just had to keep on reading, and I did actually read this in a couple hours. I started in the morning and I finished at like, I started at like 9 in the morning and I finished like 11:30, like just before midday. So it was very quick to read. One thing I did realize though was that the author, she did make quite a few spelling mistakes and tensing mistakes. I did notice how she switched around names a few times, and it confused me a bit before I realized, wait a minute, that's a typo. And also the way she described the character Zeke, I don't know, he just didn't really seem appealing. Like, I loved him as a character, but his appearance didn't seem appealing to me for some reason. Like, because she's explained him in one sense that he was like a jock and like bulky, and I imagined him, I don't know how I imagined him, but not like skinny physique as then she described him later on in the book, which kind of confused me a lot because I don't like it when authors kind of throw me around with character descriptions because it confuses me. Like, please describe your characters one way. I really only have one image in my head and I can't change it throughout anything, and it kind of pisses me off. I mainly didn't like this book because of the ending. It was very abrupt and it got really confusing. In the final like page and a half on my phone, I really didn't know what was going on. Like, there were all these like metaphors everywhere, and like, I made you this and we did that, and I was like, oh my god, please chill, like, what's going on? What's going on? Ultimately, I got over it. It was okay, it was decent. I did enjoy it, but I didn't exactly love it, as I've said, so I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Heir and the Spare by Emily Albright, and I really liked this book. I really liked it. It was addicting to the point where like I couldn't stop reading. So, okay, it really, to me, it had no overarching plot. It just had little like instances, like little like problems that happened like throughout the book. And for me, I guess that was okay, but I really just wanted something big. I mean, there was a mystery aspect to it, and I guess that could have been considered the main kind of conflict. But there wasn't, I don't know, it didn't really, like, it was too easily accepted. But this mystery did bring on, like, the smaller conflicts. And I did like the smaller conflicts, but mainly the smaller conflicts did also occur because the main character wasn't very trustworthy. She was very kind of, like, insecure, and she caused, I don't know, there was a bit of drama there with what she caused. And it was like, he's cheating on me with this girl, and I'm not sure if he can, like me because I'm from this background. And I'm just like, please calm down. Like, come on. She did an awful lot of complaining throughout the whole book, and I guess that kind of peeved me off. She made heaps of bad decisions, but ultimately I was rooting for her in the end. She was a likable character to the extent, but that 5% where I didn't like, she was very wishy-washy to me. I didn't really know what to think of her. But on the other hand, Edmund really loved him. Really loved him. Really loved him. He was such a good character, and he was so honest, and he's really what I like to see in male characters, and just love interests, and just characters full stop. He was such a nice character, and I kind of feel like he put up with a lot. A lot from everyone. I do wish I got a bit more of an ending. It was actually quite abrupt. The book only goes for 290 pages, but on my phone it was like 900 and something, so I was just like flicking down, waiting for more. And the ending was okay, I guess. It was It was okay. I really want more. Contemporaries really don't have proper endings, I've realised. They really don't have like happy endings unless it's Anna and the French Kiss. But I did enjoy this book and I couldn't stop thinking about it after I'd read it. I couldn't stop thinking of the characters and the storyline, and it really got me into, I've now come to know it as the royal relationship genre. And it's basically if one person in the relationship is like a royal and the other one's a commoner. I've suddenly gotten addicted to like stories if it has that element. The book did read a lot like fan fiction to me though, so every time I think of giving it a 5 stars, my brain is like, Georgia, please don't. It's like fan fiction. So ultimately I had to give this 4 out of 5 stars, but I really enjoyed this, and I wish there was just something. I just wish that there was that something there that didn't feel like fan fiction, so I could give it 5 out of 5 stars. Last book I read in January was The Siren by Kira Cass. This is her debut novel actually, and it was actually self-published back in 2009, but then the rights were like rebought by HarperCollins and they published it, and it was just released, and Epic Reads has been doing a massive thing on it, and I pre-ordered it and I was very excited about reading this, and I can say I'm not disappointed. I really enjoyed it. I really missed Kira Cass's writing with the selection because it was so easy to get through. It was so simplistic. It was so fun and loving, and there was something just so light about it, and it was just so easy to get through. With this book, however, there was something just missing for me. So I feel like, I don't know what it is, like I can't put my finger on it, but there was something there and I wish it wasn't, because this book could have so easily been a 5 out of 5 stars for me because I loved it so much. I got really confused with just plot at the end, and the ending felt so rushed to me. The final 50 pages, I know it felt rushed, but at the same time it felt dragged out. Like, I just wish the ending was written just a little differently, and I feel bad saying that because I love Kira Cass's writing, I love Kira Cass's books, and I love The Siren, and I just really enjoyed this book apart from the ending. I will say though that the characters reminded me a lot of The Summer of Chasing Mermaids by Sarah Ockler, which I read last year in September, and I absolutely loved that book, but this book reminded me of like The Summer of Chasing Mermaids to the point where I imagined a Kinley, the main male character in The Siren, to have black hair with blue eyes. He has blue eyes in the book, like it's canon and everything, but then I found out he was blonde and I was like, hold up. Like, I'm pretty sure that was never mentioned before, but I could have just overlooked that and just kept on thinking that he had dark hair because of The Summer of Chasing Mermaids. These books are very similar to me, and I really wish I could separate them in my head, but they were very similar, and I loved both of them, but The Summer of Chasing Mermaids had a better ending. Hate to admit it. Overall, I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I loved it a lot. It was good. Just the ending brought it down for me, and it's kind of disappointing because I really wanted to give this 5 out of 5 stars. I read heaps of ebooks in January though, so I'm really disappointed that I can't like hold that up.